How is everyone doing? Strength Chat episode 102, and today I have got a very special guest for you. Today I'm joined by a strongman who's competed at the world's strongest man 14 times. Today I'm joined by the miracle man, Mark Felix. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. What's been happening in your world? What have you been up to recently?
Well, recently, since after the Brits, I've been training. I've been doing a lot of grip training because I'll be going to the honors to do the record breakers on the 4th of March around there. So yeah, I've been training hard for that.
Nice. Where's the Arnold's? Where's that's going to be?
It's going to be in Ohio.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, in Ohio. Yeah, in March. Yeah. So I've been training hard for that. Yeah.
Nice. What are you expecting to where you're expecting to finish? What are you expecting in that competition?
Well, it's record breakers and also there's two shows like the Rolling Thunder, the whole record for the Rolling Thunder, the record breaker with the Dennis Stone, the Anvil, which I had the record for the Dennis Stone. And there's the other event that we're doing the record breakers on. So I'm looking forward to it. I think I'm going to do great.
Nice. And how are you feeling after competing at the British earlier this year?
Yeah, I'm feeling a lot better now after the Brits. I had a chest infection at the Britain, so I didn't do as well as I wanted to do. But I'm feeling a lot better now.
Yeah. So
yeah, training start again.
Oh, nice. So just for everyone listening, who have seen you, compete when World's Strongest Man has been on the television over Christmas, or even seen you compete live. Just want to give a little bit of a background to yourself and your journey through strongman, if you like.
Yeah, I'm Mark Felix. I'm one of the world's strongest man. I've been the world's strongest man 14 times, Britain's strongest man 17 times. I started as a body. I started strongman before I started strongman. I used to be a bodybuilder. I used to be a natural bodybuilder. So I was training in one gym one day, and my friend he organized a strongman competition, and then he invited me to make up numbers, and then I went and I came third, and it just started from there.
Oh, nice.
So yeah.
Did you ever expect to be competing in strongman for such a long time when you first did that competition, or did you just keep doing it because you enjoyed it?
Well, I mean, when I did the first one, I just get hooked straight away because I always love lifting weight, throwing weight around. Because, my body is built that way, just want to lift every stuff. Yeah. So I know that's what I wanted to do. So, I love it and I always love it, strong man, just being in the game and lifting stuff up.
Yeah, awesome. So when you mentioned there about, you just, enjoy lifting, some of your most famous events have been, and, especially when I've been watching you compete, whether that be live or, watching any of the giants live on television, is deadlifting for reps, and you broke I think was it last year that it was 3 herculean holds world records that you broke in a row?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, that was some good events for me. I mean, grip is a very strong point of mine. I mean, I always look forward to grip events. Yeah, so I was looking forward to the herculean hold and just break this record one after the other, which was really good.
Yeah.
Still getting a buzz of it, yeah.
Because obviously you watch a couple of the other athletes, and a lot of the other sort of strong men can be quite loud, but especially watching when you broke the Hercules hold record, you just seem to go to that sort of quiet place to do something like that and to keep that grip. What were you actually thinking about at the time? What kept you that focused?
Well, the thing was, you just have to switch off from everything else, focus on something like. I usually focus on breathing and just hold as tight as I can and just focus on breathing, because I mean, sometimes for the first 10, 15 seconds, you're going to feel that burn, but once you dig in and you pass that burn, then you could just keep going. Yeah, that's why I just keep going.
Yeah.
Just hold tight and just, keep focus on breathing, take your mind off the pain.
Yeah, because you sort of looked unfaltering on, even for holding all the way through. Because you see a couple of the athletes, shaking straight away. But yeah, you just looked completely in the zone when you were doing those events. Going.
It's a strong event for me, and I practice a lot, I train a lot. So I just know where I have to be. I know which one I have to put on the herculean sword first.
Yeah.
I mean, it's all these fine details that you have to look at, stuff that could affect you. You don't want it to affect you on the day, so you keep training and looking for weak spot and stuff like that.
Yeah. When it comes to because another strong event of yours is a deadlift for reps, which I don't think it's very rare to see you sort of get beaten in an event like that. I know for me, as I compete in powerlifting, deadlift is one of my favourite events. But to be able to do that amount of weight for reps, is that down to your grip? Do you train for quite high reps at those weights, or how have you been so dominant with the deadlift for reps?
I mean, I do a lot of repetitions. I still do a lot of between 8 and 12 reps, and I do a lot of bend over rows. I mean, the thing about back, I do full back exercise. I don't skip any back work. Right? I just make sure that I do everything, even from doing your hamstring. Make sure that you have a nice strong hamstring. To all from bend over rows, T-bar rows, one-arm dumbbells. I do the whole lot.
Yeah.
When it's coming to back, and then the deadlift, I do deadlift twice a week, one heavy session, one light session with back.
Yeah.
So I always want to make sure that I'm up there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Even yesterday, I just been in the gym and since I competed at Britain, I haven't done any more deadlifting.
Yeah.
Because I take some time off, and then I just was back yesterday and I got 340, and it's pretty easy.
Yeah. Oh, nice. So, in terms of the actual program that you follow, from doing that first competition that you mentioned, going to your friend's competition, compared to the training that you do now, or the training program that you follow now, how has it changed? And how have you sort of managed yourself throughout your career?
I mean, because from coming from bodybuilding background to strongman, it takes some time for me to switch. It takes about a year. I mean, I've been trying to switch because it's different, type of training. With the strongman, you have to make sure that your fast twitch fiber to be fine. So you just walk a bit faster, more explosive. But I still do bodybuilding style training in the gym sometimes, but instead of concentrating on the muscle that you're working, you just focus on the speed.
Yeah.
So just to make sure you get that speed up. You still do bicep curls and stuff, but not to concentrate on it too much. You just need to be strong and,
yeah.
And make sure that you're strengthening. You're linking up your arms and whatever body part you're using rather than short movements. Make sure you go for the full length movement, because all the events that most of the events we're doing is for time.
Yeah.
As soon as the whistle blows, you just have to pick it up and go as fast. But if you keep lengthening your muscles, as soon as the whistle goes, you just pick it up and shoot off. But if you start doing too much short movement, so now you could get injured.
Yeah.
So make sure that you stretch it out.
Yeah. So how would a normal week sort of look for you in terms of, when would you practice the events, and when would you just do sort of, a standard session of deadlifts and whatever else you might be doing?
Well, standard week, I tend to mix it up. It's not just shoulders. I do a lot of shoulders. I mean, looking at the event, because it's a week event, I still do a lot of shoulder work. I do full shoulder work, and sometimes I just start with maybe log. I do a lot of dumbbell presses and stuff like that. I keep mixing all my training up all the time.
Yeah.
You know, but I try and do events, some kind of event training at least, you know, once a day after my full body workout. Like, because I still do everything from, you know, legs and whatever, just to keep my body strong. And then I'm going to do maybe like some farmers walk, or maybe some yard, maybe during the week or sometimes. And weekends, I just do a full event training session.
Yeah. Would that be classed as because obviously you said there you needed to be, you know, for the events that you're doing in strongman, it's either going to be for reps or it's going to be for time. Would you class the, you know, the farmers walks and the event as your conditioning, or would you add in, you know, some other conditioning that you would do yourself?
You know, we still do a lot of conditioning work. Well, like on Sundays when we finish training on Sunday, we always try and do a moving event. So like maybe loading or farmers walk, dog walk, any moving event is good to do, like at least a moving event rather than just static event at the end of your session or before your session. So you always keep your fit and keep just moving, you know, well. So when on the day when it's coming, you don't have to, you just get stuck in straight away.
Yeah.
You know, like some of them, a lot of strong men, they go to competition and they're struggling to warm up and stuff like that because they haven't been doing that in the gym. You know, they don't warm up. So when they get it, they're that nervous, they don't warm up. So a lot of them sometimes they get injured like that.
Yeah.
So you gotta make sure that they warm up and stuff.
So what would be the normal? What would be the normal warm up that you go through then? Because obviously, you know, in terms of the consistency that you've had in competing, you know, world's strongest man, Britain's strongest man, you know, you've been quite consistent at getting to the competitions. You know, what warm up have you usually followed to reduce, you know, injuries?
I like to do a full body warm up. I use a lot of bands. And I mean, I do a lot of mobility style training as well to keep you know, agile and stuff. I do more like mobility every Tuesday. And when I go to competitions, before I start like lifting heavy weight, I do all those kind of those movements like loosening up your hip and stuff, and stretching it. Like if I have to do a deadlift, I use my bands and stuff for it, you know, to warm up my and glute and everything like that. I do a lot of like bend over rows. I like to do bend over rows before I do deadlifts, because like you warm up your biggest muscle in the back, and like lunge. If I have to do carries and stuff like that, make sure that your hamstring and everything just like really warm up and stuff, and you know, just keep everything moving.
Yeah. In terms of the, because obviously you just mentioned there about injury prevention, and I've said how consistent you've been in competing. What sort of, how do you manage, and you've chatted about your training, what's sort of been your secret to success, if you like, in terms of, you know, your nutrition and your recovery and, you know, staying in such good shape? Is there anything in particular that you keep on top of with your food and your recovery, or has anything changed throughout your career?
Well, to be honest, I listen to my body a lot.
Yeah.
You know, if I go to the gym and I'm not feeling strong, I wouldn't go too heavy. I might go for higher rep, but I wouldn't go heavy. Yeah. And if I go to the gym the next day and I'm feeling very strong, then I'm going to go heavy. That's how it's worked for me. Yeah. But in all that, I have to make sure that I warm up first. I warm up pretty good before I even like try to go heavy and things like that. Yeah.
And in between, because, you know, you might do a couple of competitions a year. How was your as you've sort of progressed through your strongman career, if you like, how's the sort of recovery between competitions changed? Does it take a little bit longer? Do you need to take a little bit of time off? Because obviously you mentioned that it was only the other day that you deadlifted just after the British. How was sort of recovery between competitions?
Well, to be honest, my body, my genetics is completely different. You know, when I did that Britain's Strongest Man a couple Saturdays ago. Yeah. When we finished that, you know, I could do the same thing again.
Yeah.
Even when I finish it, that's how my body works. I could have just do the same thing again. That's it. All the events. And I was back to work on the Monday, and I feel like if I haven't done anything, that's how my body feel.
Right. How have you?
So my body recovered very quick.
Yeah. How have you found sort of managing competing at the very top of strongman and managing, you know, working full time as well? How has that worked? Do you sometimes feel as though that limits your training, or have you ever thought about, you know, going you know, full time and committing full time to it, or what are your thoughts on that?
Well, at the moment, I'm thinking, you know, we're taking some more time off so I could do some more training, because my body's feeling really good at the moment. Yeah. And I just want to train right now.
Yeah.
So I was just thinking about taking some more time off to do some more training and just go less on the work side of it.
Yeah.
So that's the plan right now. Yeah. So yeah.
In terms of because obviously last year you went over and competed at the North American Open. How have you found traveling with strongman? Because, you know, the strongman is, you know, all over the world. You know, and we, you know, the finals are delivered all over the world. How have you found, you know, traveling and managing yourself going to these events in other countries?
Well, I don't find it as too bad, because I think my body, I get used to it at the moment. That's why I don't like to go like too far in advance. So I like to go there, get there like today and compete tomorrow.
Yeah.
That's why, like, before every jet lag and stuff really start kicking in.
Oh, okay.
So that's why I like to just like that card.
Yeah.
That's why I like to do it. Yeah.
Do you usually stay when it's at these places? Do you usually have a couple of days after the competition, or is it just a case of you go there, compete, and then it's like right straight back and then back to normal routine?
You know, straight back. I get the Thursday, compete Friday, and Saturday if we have to, back on Sunday.
Yeah,
that's it.
Okay.
No time to hang around now.
Straight in, straight out, get the job done.
Straight out. No sightseeing or anything like that.
Okay. And then obviously you said your body sort of recovers quite well. How do you, because, you know, with the amount of, you know, muscle mass that you'll have and the amount of training that you'll do, what does a normal day of sort of nutrition look like to you? How do you manage to get all the food in?
Well, you know, use plenty supplements and stuff, but I also eat sensible throughout the whole day.
Yeah.
I don't like eat big meals. I just eat small meals throughout the whole day, so I just constantly feeding, drinking loads of water and stuff like that. Yeah. And make sure that I get at least, you know, 7,500 calories a day. Sometimes I doesn't have all that. All depends on, you know, how many work I have on, or what doing the gym and stuff.
Yeah.
Just consistent with my weight. It doesn't really like drop.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
And just stabilize.
Yeah. Do you ever try and build up your weight heading into a competition, or like you say there, do you just try and maintain a consistent weight all the time?
Well, I usually try to maintain a consistent weight all the time. I mean, coming to competition, I mean, if you want to go up to like 20, 25 stone, I think you have to let it go up there like gradually.
Yeah.
You don't just want to put it on too sudden, because you're going to get sluggish.
Yeah.
And you don't want to be sluggish. You're going to feel strong, but I mean, when it's coming to moving events, I mean, you won't have to move, but you won't have to recover fast. So you need to gradually build your weight up, you know. So it could be more fit just going with your fighting weight.
Yeah, absolutely. So obviously we've covered there a little bit about, you know, your training and how you manage yourself, and you know, the nutrition side of things and the recovery side of things. Because obviously, you know, there's a lot of athletes who you've competed against who are still competing, or a couple of, you know, retired, but you're still going strong. How have you found since, you know, you're first starting out competing at the top level of strongman, you know, 14 appearances at World's Strongest Man? How have you found that, you know, strongman as a sport has grown in popularity? And as well, you know, in terms of the events getting heavier and more challenging.
But yeah, I mean, I'm glad it's moved on because I mean, from competing in car park and stuff like that to still at arenas and stuff, it's coming a long way, and I mean, which is very exciting. You know, and people getting to know who we are and stuff like that. I mean, you can hardly go anywhere where people don't recognize us. You know, so which is pretty good.
Yeah. How have you found sort of, because, you know, I remember, you know, I've grown up watching strongman, and you can see, you know, that the weights are you know, gradually increasing year on year and becoming a lot more challenging. How have you found, and, you know, from competing with all the other athletes, how have you found to keep adapting and keep developing, you know, when all these challenges are thrown at you?
Well, you know, you just have to keep, you know, moving with the time, you know, you train smarter, you know. I mean, you train better, you know, just train hard. I mean, for me, even though the weight increases, it doesn't really bother me.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I'm doing 180 stone, 200 stone, I mean, 235 stone. I mean, I still doing those kind of weights, you know. You know, mine, like last year, my deadlifts, I put my 420 deadlift. That was like the easiest 420 deadlift I ever did.
Right.
You know, I mean, all the years, yeah. So I'm still up there. I'm still strong.
Yeah. In terms of because, you know, you see when you watch on social media that you'll have a meeting with all the athletes before the events. Have you ever gone into a competition, or, you know, when they've actually released the events that they've had and thought, bloody hell, that's going to be a little bit challenging? You know, have you ever thought that, you know, a curveball has been thrown in there in terms of the events that that, you know, Giants Live or World's Strongest Man have put together?
No, well, stuff like that doesn't bother me. I mean, we train events through the whole year, and if stuff like that come up, it doesn't bother me. I mean, I remember, you know, one year, I mean, I went to Ukraine, Poland, to do a competition with Marius, and then we was doing it on the sand. And everyone started complaining the sand. They don't want to do a yoke in the sand because they go twist their leg or whatever. Right. And then everybody was very cautious. And when Marius get under the yoke, he just like flying that sand like if there was no sand there. Yeah. And I remember that to this day. When you go there, you just get stuck in. Yeah. And just go for it. That's it. Don't think about it. You just have to go for it. Yeah, I think that's it's the same playing field for all of us. So just get in there, get stuck in, and just go for it. Yeah, I think that's a good mentality to have because, you know, I know sometimes a lot of people, especially when they're going to a competition, can sometimes overthink it and, you know, worry about, will this happen, will that happen? And I suppose until you give it a go, you won't know what happens until you do it. Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, you start going with an open mind. You know, just go with an open mind, just go for it and see what's happening. Just go for the best. With the, because obviously you mentioned there, you know, about competing with other athletes. Who have you really enjoyed, you know, competing against throughout your career? And you know, who have you felt you've had some real good battles with? Well, I used to like to compete with Marius because we compete so many times. I competed with Marius with more times than any other strongman because I used to go to Poland at least 3 times a year. We used to go to Ukraine together, Russia together. We used to go to Belarus together. We used to just go everywhere and just compete together. Yeah. You know, so I competed with him so many times, and you know, we used to have a good time. Yeah. Just pretty good. Yeah. What made him so you know, dominant as a strongman, do you think? I think it's just his mentality. He just coming once you get on the field there, he just as soon as you get there, he just start warming up. So he's like proper pump, and he's just focused. And he used to train a lot. He used to work really hard as a strongman. Yeah. He used to train a lot, you know, just repetition. Yeah, well, you say repetition is the mother of all skill. So
Yeah,
that's why
absolutely.
you used to do the repetition
Yeah,
and do all the events. Before you even get there. So even now, with us, we still do by time before we go to competition. So we time ourselves, and when we go to competition, we know we try to beat our own time that we did in the yard or wherever we train. So because if you're like go flat out and you do 30 seconds. When you go there, you want to beat that time.
yeah, absolutely. Because you want to be pushing yourself all the time. With the obviously with the you mentioned there about the people that you've competed against, but right now with a couple of younger sort of British athletes and the Matthias Kilikowski coming from Poland, and a couple of other sort of younger athletes coming through. Is there some athletes that you predict to get onto the podium come the next couple of years on World's Strongest Man, and especially coming from some of the British athletes that you might have trained with?
Oh yeah, definitely. This guys, and then you got people like Adam Bishop and Luke and Tom stuff, and there's some other good guys coming through. So you should expect some big things for a lot of British athletes in the future. And you got Matthias and those guys there. And a lot of those guys still young, like Matthias and Martin and all those guys still young. And you got the Stockman brothers. And so there are going to be big things coming through even from here and everywhere in the future. There's some good things going for strongman at the moment.
Yeah. Where do you think? Because obviously with these younger athletes coming through, where do you think strongman's going to go into the future? Do you think strongman's just going to keep growing and growing, and the crowds are going to keep growing, and the weights are going to keep increasing?
Oh yeah, definitely. It's going to keep growing. I think the weight going to keep increasing. People going to just try to increase the weight every time, but you don't want to just go and just increase it too fast.
Yeah.
Because people going to just get hurt. You just need to build it up gradually.
Yeah.
It's come on. The weight come on a long way. When I just started, you walk into a competition and the log used to be 110. Farmers used to be like 120.
Yeah.
The heaviest stone used to be at 110 stone and stuff like that. Now you wouldn't even go to a novice competition with 110K.
Yeah.
You wouldn't have novice competition with 100 and at least 20 to 140K.
Right.
When you go to a competition, the opening weight for our log is like 160.
Yeah.
So it says going up, and even the deadlift, doing deadlift for reps now in a competition is like 320 on the axle bar. I'm not even talking about the regular bar. The one, if it's a regular bar, it's going to be at least 350.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy to think how much that records and weights have been pushed, really. Because I know especially watching the strongman when it was over and following the events as they came last year. I know a couple of the commentators have mentioned that previously this would have been a world record, but now people are coming through and sort of blowing that out of the water. So to see yourself still going there and dominating some of the events is really good to see. In terms of what your plans are and upcoming competitions this year, and heading into the next couple of years, what are your plans for competing? Because I remember going to the last year's Britain's Strongest Man, and there was talk of that might have been your last strongest man, but you've kept going with competitions. How are you feeling, and what are your plans for the future?
Well, I'm still feeling good. Last year, I don't know. Last year I was just coming back from injury and got my shoulders. I had a shoulder operation, and so I had the injuries last year, and I was just thinking, that's it, because because of this injury and stuff. And even this year, I mean, I get there and I had like a chest infection. Well, I still think I'm gonna compete I'm still gonna compete. You know, I have no plans of retiring right now because based on how I'm feeling right now, I'm feeling really good right now.
Yeah. Wow.
You know, I'm gonna just keep training hard and then, you know, just keep going as far as I could go.
Yeah. Awesome. I know from, you know, as a fan myself of strongman and having seen you compete for so long, you know, it'd be great to see you, you know, extend that Hercules world record that you set, and you know, keep seeing you, you know, smashing out competitions. What are your sort of next competitions looking like for the rest of the year?
Well, yeah, there's some big competition coming up. I just have to wait and see, you know. So there's a lot of giants live coming up still, and then they're going to be I think they're going to be Hercules Hall in the Albert Hall, which I really love to do.
Yeah.
You know, so to go and like defend my title, which, you know, going to be awesome because I'm going to break it again.
Yeah, cool. That'll be absolutely awesome to see. You know. Because I know myself being based in Leeds, I think the next competition in Leeds is the Europe's Strongest Man. Will you be attending that?
I didn't know yet. I mean, I haven't spoken to Darren about it yet, but you know, so I'm just gonna wait and see. You know? I mean, I would love to do it because I mean, there's some good events there. Yeah. I mean, there's going to be a max log, but all the rest of events are pretty good events. Yeah. Like the front tours and everything else. So it's a good event. Yeah. You know, so I would love to do it. Yeah.
How close to a competition do you usually make the decision whether, you know, you're going to give it a go or maybe pass a competition?
Well, it's very rare I pass competition like this, like I said, because I train all the time.
Yeah.
To be honest, so I mean, if you call me tomorrow and say, right, they're doing a competition somewhere and can I do it? I would just say yes because I'm feeling fit, I'm feeling strong, and I'm always ready to go. You know, so you have to be prepared.
Yeah. Would there ever be a limit on the amount of competitions that you would do in a year, or, you know, like what you mentioned before about listening to your body? Would you just, you know, see how you feel in terms of recovery and how you're feeling with your training?
Well, I'd like to see how it feels. I mean, how many competitions I do a year. I mean, I just have to wait up and see whether it's, you know, beneficial for you to do it or not. I mean, sometimes based on how things going, it just don't make sense to doing it. Yeah. Sometimes. Yeah. So you just have to see whether it's profitable or it's not profitable for you to do it.
Yeah, I suppose there's no reason just to compete for competing's sake.
Yeah, because I'm not doing it for the experience anymore. You know, so I mean, I do enough for the experience really. So I'm not looking for the experience right now. Yeah, just looking for that stuff.
Yeah. Is there a competition that, you know, at the start of the year when you look ahead, is there a competition that you always look forward to that year that stands out above the rest, or do you just, like you said at the start of the podcast, you know, you enjoy lifting, you enjoy training, enjoy competing? Is there one that sort of stands out above the rest?
Well, I look forward to all this competition. I look forward to the Europe competition and the Manchester one and the one down south. I look forward to all the competition. I mean, once I get to go ahead to do this competition, it's like I just like to love to train for just, you know, get in the zone and get in the mood. They have something to look forward to. So you just train and train.
Awesome. You know, it's been really, I was really looking forward to, as soon as you agreed to jump on the podcast, I was really, you know, looking forward to chatting with you, having, you know, sort of grown up watching you compete, and, you know, seeing you live at some of the Britain's Strongest Man has been, you know, absolutely awesome. For everyone listening, is there any take-home points or words of wisdom you'd like to finish with?
Well, you know, I mean, the one that listen, I mean, just, take care and listen. I mean, look, you need to look after yourself, listen to your body. I mean, if you're going to train, I mean, it's not difficult as it used to be when we just started. There's like blueprint now. So just do your research, and instead of going the wrong way for too long, make sure you get it right the first time, and just you work on that.
Yeah. Awesome. Some really, really good advice to sort of finish on there. And for everyone listening who, might want to see that the training videos or the content that you put out there, or maybe even look at some events that you've got coming up, where can people find you?
Well, I mean, I'm on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. I'm on all the social media platforms, so you can see me there, even on YouTube.
Awesome. Thanks a lot for taking the time to chat with me, Mark. Really, really appreciated chatting with you, and speaking to someone who I've followed for such a long time. To be able to actually chat with you, is pretty cool from a fan's point of view. So yeah, thanks a lot for taking the time to chat with me. Thanks a lot to everyone listening, and I will see you all next week.
Cheers. Take care.